Hi everyone, today I'm going to walk you through animating some views in React Native. We're going to use the built-in animated view, and we're going to do some sequences and some in parallel animations as well as a loop animation. I'm also going to show you how to start the animation, stop the animation and reset the animation. We'll be working on things like scale, translation, color and opacity. So first off, I'm just setting up a few different buttons to start, stop and reset my animation. And I'm also going to create the related functions. Giving that a save, it obviously fails. I haven't set up my functions yet, so I'm going to go ahead and set those up. So I'm just defining my start animation function here, and I'll do the same for stop and reset. You can see it now builds. Those buttons don't do anything because I haven't defined the actual function. I'm also going to remove that text there because I don't need text in my animation. I'm going to just have like a little ball-shaped circle that I animate. So I'm going to create an animated view. This is going to be what I'm going to animate, and I'm going to give it a style, which I'm going to define in my styles down below. It's going to have some default styles, and then it's going to have some that will sort of change as I animate them. So this is my default style, which is the ball. I'm going to set the width and height of the view, and I'm also going to set the radius and the color. I'm going to set the background color for now, but I will change that later, and then I'll remove this at that point. I want my border radius to be half my width and height so that it's a circle. Just adding a margin for some display purposes. You can see my blue ball here on the screen. Next up, I'm going to create a reference for my animation. So the reason you'll often use ref with animations is you want some persistent variable that is able to be changed but doesn't cause unnecessary re-renders, and that's just going to make it more efficient to do your animations. So inside start animation, I'm going to actually just set up my animation, and my first animation is going to be a pretty basic one. I'm going to work on moving the position of the ball. And it's going to have a starting value of animated value. So the number you can provide to animated value can be between 0 and it can be multiple values actually. It can be an integer in this case. So I'm going to first focus on animating that position. And so I've got an animated timing. It says what value I want it to go to, what duration I want the animation to take to be animated over. So for 1 second I want to animate this, and I can specify any sort of easing functions I want to have to make the animation look and do a bit more interesting things. So in this case it's going to bounce once it hits that sort of 2 value. And I'm going to use the native driver. Because I'm wanting to start the animation, I can then just go animation.current.start animation. Oh, it's actually just .start, sorry. I can do the same thing with stop animation and reset animation. I'll go check whether there's an animation.current value. If there is, I'm going to go ahead and stop. I can copy that and paste that code over to reset. I'm going to be using mostly the same code, except instead of stop, I will reset. So reset's going to basically take the animation back to its starting point. And stop will just pause it where it is. Now I'm defining the style that is going to be animated, so I'm going to do the transform here. And I'm wanting to change the Y translation to be the position, so that's my animation over that value. So I'm starting my animation, you can see it sort of dropped down and then did a bit of a bounce. If I reset, it goes back to the beginning, and you could see I could stop it mid-animation and reset. One thing you might want to do is to do a loop. That means it will just continue animating until you decide to stop it. So I'm going to show you that now. It just continuously does the same thing because it's looping through that animation. Inside your loop, you can have some different animated steps. So you could have like a sequence, which will perform your animations in the order you define them. So I'm going to copy and paste my position animation in here. I'm also going to add one for scale and one for size. One for opacity and one for scale. Scale is the size. So once again, using a useRef just because I want that persistent value that's going to make my animation more efficient and not force re-renders when it updates. Setting that duration to half a second to take place over. And I'm also going to add scale to my transform. So you can see there it drops down and then it increases its scale and it's looping through that. Now that I've got scale, I'm going to want to add opacity. Once again, we're going to go ahead and create a new useRef. And we're going to keep that value starting at 1 because we're going to want to have it start fully blue. It's going to fade out and then fade back in. Well, it's going to come back in actually because of the loop. So I'm setting the opacity here. I'm wanting to decrease its opacity to half, so I still want it visible over a duration of half a second, and then it loops back to the beginning. You can see it sort of decreased its opacity, and then I reset the animation. Inside my sequence, I'm also going to want to have a parallel step here. So this is just showing you that you can also have different timings and animations happening in parallel. That means if you want to do multiple things at the same time, like transform the size and move at the same time, you can do that. You don't need to wait for everything to finish before you progress. So in parallel, after I've done this sequence of position, scale, opacity, then I'm going to move on to my parallel animation, which is going to animate my position, opacity, and scale so that it looks like a seamless loop. And then it's just going to continue looping. So it's going to make it, look quite natural and seamless. You might use something like this if you're like creating like your own loading animation. And in other times I've used animation for if I want to slide a view to be able to see a delete button or something like that that's hiding off screen. So there are a few different uses that you might use it for. So yeah, I've got position, I've got scale, and I've got opacity that are all going to happen in parallel and move the ball back to its starting position. I'm basically doing the reverse of what my initial animations in the sequence do. Cool. Let's start the animation. You can see it gets to the bottom, goes opaque, and then bounces itself back up. It just does that seamlessly. You can reset or stop it at any time. Another thing I want to show you, which is a little bit more complex, is animating the color. So the reason animating the color is more challenging is because the interpolation, you need to use like interpolation to figure out what the animated value is, because you can only have that as like a number. So I've got my change color function. This is just going to perform an animation on the color. I'm adding a new constant for my color. I'm just going to give that an animated value of 0. So now I'm setting up my new animation. This is going to be a separate animation to my loop, and I can control it independently, so you can actually have 2 animations going at the same time if you want. I'm going to check the value of color, and if it's 0, then I'm going to say that I want to move towards 1, and if it's 1, I'm going to say I want to move towards 0, or if it's any, yeah. And then I'm going to go ahead and set the duration that I want that to occur over to 1 second and just start that animation. And that's going to be called directly when I press the button. So it could be actioned while my ball is still moving. Or it can be actioned while the other animation is not running as well. So this is the more complex part. I've got this interpolated color. I'm using this color.interpolate to basically say I want to map my colors, my numbers to a different color, and that will help my animation move between different colors. So I've got blue and red. So 0 will map to blue, 1 will map to red. You can add different numbers if you want different mappings. Next up, I'm going to add background color here so that it can animate it. And I'm going to use that interpolated color. I'm going to go ahead and remove the default setting of blue. So we can start the animation. You can see I can also just click that change color button and it'll animate back. Yeah, and you can see that can take place at any point in time. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have, please like and subscribe for more content. All my code will be available on GitHub.